The 2024 presidential election is over 3.5 years away. That doesn't mean it's too early to begin analyzing the potential candidates for both parties. However, only one party really has an open primary, and that is, of course, the GOP. It's likely that the Democrats will either run Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, depending entirely on the state of President Biden's mental health by 2024. But the Republican Party, well, they've got quite a few potential candidates, from former President Donald Trump to Governor Larry Hogan. In this video, I will attempt to give you a brief outline of who the potential candidates are for the Republican Party, and more importantly, who can win. I've put together a list of 15 serious contenders for the party's nomination 2024, and please bear in mind that these are not the only candidates who will likely run. In fact, hundreds of candidates run for each party's primary every year, but only a dozen or so actually get media attention. So that is what this video will be centered on. I'll give each candidate an electability grid ranging from F to A. Your average F candidate is unpopular, plagued by scandal, and generally disliked by their party's base. An A candidate tends to be popular, has no scandals, and is well liked by their party's base. Now, there are also some candidates who might get media attention, but are more likely to not run for obvious reasons, like Kanye West, Candace Owens, or Ben Shapiro. It's also worth noting that not all 15 of these candidates have declared. I'll bet serious money that a big chunk of them won't even end up running. These candidates are also ranked by likelihood of getting the nomination, not electability. With that being said, we should really get into this video, and we'll start with number 15, who is John Kasich. Kasich is the former governor of Ohio, and a prominent conservative Trump critic. He actually endorsed Joe Biden in the 2020 election, and even spoke at the Democratic convention. Kasich ran as a pragmatic and experienced moderate in the 2016 GOP primaries, and he was well liked by party leaders. You can probably tell why. He was from a state that was crucial to the Republican Party's path to victory that year, and he had received bipartisan support in his bid for re-election in 2014, where, despite Barack Obama winning the state 2 years prior, Kasich received nearly two-thirds of the vote cast in his re-election bid. However, since he lost those primaries, his reputation among Republicans has taken a serious hit. He refused to back Trump in 2016, and throughout his presidency was a prominent conservative who criticized his moves. He even considered primarying Trump in 2020, but decided against it. Like I said, he ended up supporting Joe Biden for president and was a key part of the Democratic campaign in his own state of Ohio, which has earned him respect from a lot of his colleagues on the left. This doesn't bode well for Kasich in a Republican primary, though. Former President Trump has branded him as a rhino, and Kasich is likely too liberal to win a primary dominated by conservatives. So even if Kasich runs, it's likely that he'd perform poorly with the Republican base, which is why I gave him an electability grade of a D. He's not scandal-plagued, but other than that, he's a pretty poor choice for Team Red. Number 14 is similar. It's Governor Larry Hogan, who, by sheer coincidence, is another anti-Trump moderate. Hogan is the governor of Maryland, a very Democratic state. I mean, Joe Biden won it by 33 points. Both the state's senators are Democrats. But Hogan is a popular governor because he's very moderate, and isn't exactly a Trumpian-type conservative. Hogan is so popular that he even won re-election by double digits in 2018, a blue wave year. But, unfortunately for Hogan, it's unlikely that his success will translate into a successful campaign for president. First of all, Hogan didn't even vote for Trump, who has a 90% approval rating among Republicans. And there's not really a path for an anti-Trump Republican in a primary right now. And that makes Hogan such a long shot. It's not that he's unpopular in Maryland, it's actually quite the opposite. But his moderate and corporatist brand of conservatism won't do him any favors with such a conservative and nationalist base that craves right-wing populism. For this reason, and for Hogan's inability to appeal to the base, it's my expectation that, should he run, he'd have a very hard time winning the primary. As a result of this, I gave him a D grade for electability. At number 13, we've got Mike Pompeo, the former director of the CIA. Pompeo is closely aligned with Trump, so he does have a decent amount of Trumpian base appeal, but I doubt that he would get the working class support that Trump enjoyed. First of all, Pompeo was a career politician, which Trump was not. And Trump was able to connect with working class voters who felt left behind by the establishment because of his apolitical background. Pompeo doesn't have that luxury. However, he could possibly be slightly less repulsive to suburban voters who came out against Trump in record numbers in the 2020 election. However, due to his lack of name recognition and charisma, I doubt that he'd come out of a GOP primary. If he were to somehow win a primary, he could be a decent candidate, so I'll give him an electability grade of a C. Do you recognize this guy? Well, if you do, it's probably because he ran for president in 2016. This is Christie, the former governor of New Jersey. Christie is your classic conservative, and, despite being the governor of a blue state, he governed as a hardcore conservative. First elected in 2009, Christie immediately became popular and was easily re-elected in 2013. However, since then, Christie has really lost the popularity he enjoyed. This is mostly due to Bridgegate, otherwise known as the Fort Lee closure scandal. But since Bridgegate is more fun to say, we'll call it Bridgegate. Anyways, to make a very long and complex story into a short and not as complex story, Christie basically closed down the George Washington Bridge for purely political reasons. Now, although this may just seem like a nothing burger, think of how many people drive across a busy bridge every day. Imagine how many people were hurt by the halting of traffic across the bridge. Christie's approval rating took a huge hit after this, and the New Jersey governor's mansion flipped back to the Democrats in 2017. Christie may enjoy okay support from evangelical right-wingers, but if he somehow managed to win the GOP nomination, he'd probably perform worse than Trump due to the greater and working class and rural support for him. The only thing Christie has going for him is that he is, to his credit, a gifted speaker and debater, but I don't think that would help him win the hearts of key voters who would need to be victorious in a presidential election. Pre-Bridgegate, Christie was a strong candidate. Now he's in shambles, and he's pretty close to an F in terms of electability. I'll be generous and give him a D-. Number 11 is our first sitting member of Congress, and he's pretty famous. It's Senator Mitt Romney of Utah. Romney's been in politics for nearly 4 decades, and he's earned a pretty solid reputation as a pragmatic moderate. He's also the son of George Romney, the former governor of Michigan. George Romney also ran for president in 1968, but he lost the Republican primary. Anyways, Romney served as governor of Massachusetts in the early 2000s, then got the Republican nomination for president in the 2012 election. You probably don't know this, but he lost to Barack Obama. Although it looked like his political career was over at that point, he made a comeback in 2018, where he won a Senate seat in deep red Utah. Like mentioned earlier, he's voted like a fairly moderate Republican in the Senate, something that could help win suburban voters, a demographic he overperformed Trump with in 2012. However, on the flip side, Romney has established himself as the most outspoken Trump critic in the Senate. During the January 2020 Trump impeachment trials, he was the only Senate Republican vote to convict. He also joined 6 other Republicans to vote to convict Trump nearly a year later, in February 2021. That's less significant because he wasn't the only one. For this reason, Romney is the first person most Trump supporters tag as a rhino. His moderate social stances combined with his corporate establishmentarian rhetoric really hurt him with much of Trump's base. I also doubt he could get the working class support that Trump received in 2016 and 2020 due to this. I mean, he did lose the same Rust Belt in 2012, though it was all red in 2016, so it's not like this is just pure speculation. Plus, Trump did miles better than Romney in rural places anyways. With Romney alienating himself so much from the average GOP voter, I say with full confidence that there's no way he wins a primary. However, if the Death Star in Hogwarts land at 2:30 on a Saturday afternoon, then maybe Romney's got a chance at this. Seriously though, his reputation within his party has taken a serious hit, and for this reason I'll go ahead and give an electability grade of a D. At number 10, we've got another current senator, and it's Marco Rubio of Florida. Rubio is yet another Republican who ran in 2016, and unlike Christie, he actually had a respectable showing. He won the Minnesota and Puerto Rico primaries. Rubio also has the added benefit of being from a swing state, Florida, and is a Hispanic, a demographic that Republicans have struggled with in the past, but may have a future with if they run the right candidates. And in his 2 Senate races, Rubio has performed exponentially better than Trump in the suburbs, which, as you might expect, is a key group of voters. However, it's not all great for Rubio. His moderate stances on immigration hurt him in the 2016 primaries with rural voters. They'll definitely hurt him again should he run. He also had minimal appeal to white working class voters, and without strong working class support, it's very hard for the GOP to have a chance at winning national elections. Rubio may be better than the people mentioned before, but he's still not ideal. His electability grade is a B-. Now, number 9. It's the best-known conservative political pundit on all of television, Tucker Carlson. Despite having never held political office before or any political experience other than commentary, Carlson has been floated as a serious contender for the party's nomination by a lot of right-wingers for the past couple of years. That being said, I don't think Tucker will run. Although he has a big fan base and a lot of people would turn out to vote for him, that assumes that A, Trump doesn't run, and B, Carlson doesn't implode early on. We haven't seen him in action on a debate stage ever before. His lack of experience in campaigning makes me nervous about his chances in a primary. His poll numbers may start off strong, but I have a hard time imagining a scenario where he doesn't fall after the first few months. Now, if he won a GOP primary, I think he'd be similar to Trump. Terrible in the suburbs, great in rural and working class areas. But remember, Trump isn't a winning strategy. It's the recipe for doing well in the Rust Belt but doing poorly in the Sun Belt. Carlson may be more viable than a lot of people think, but I still think he'll lose. His electability grade is a C+. Not terrible, but still not amazing. We're going back to Washington for number 8. For number 9, I talked a lot about Tucker Carlson not having held elected office before. Well, this next potential candidate has won critical races before. It's Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Cotton was first elected in 2014, where he actually beat out a Democratic incumbent to flip the seat red. He easily won re-election in 2020, partially due to no Democrat running against him, but whatever, and has become famous for his ultra-conservative positions and votes in Congress. Cotton voted with President Trump 87% of the time and has become a vocal critic of Joe Biden. That makes Cotton beloved with the establishmentarian base of the GOP, but it doesn't help him with moderates or suburban voters. In addition to this, Cotton lacks minority support. He has made controversial statements about slavery, which other Republicans, to their credit, have rebuked. Cotton also doesn't use the America First rhetoric that Trump has used to become popular with the nationalist base inside his party, which I think is Cotton's main weakness. If Cotton becomes a populist by 2024, I think he could be a decent candidate. But if it's current Tom Cotton on that debate stage, I'm not buying in, and still think he drops out before Iowa. I'll pass on Tom Cotton, and I'll give him an electability grade of a C-. Number 7 is our first female candidate, and it's South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. First elected in 2018, Noem gained recognition for handling COVID. She was one of the few governors to never issue a mask mandate. South Dakota generally had some of the least strict coronavirus precautions in the country. This has been both a blessing and a curse for the governor. On the one hand, conservatives and libertarians alike have praised her. However, moderates, as well as those on the left, have accused her of playing politics with people's lives. Noem's approval has been all over the place. In late June 2020, her approval was around 54%, but has since fallen to just 39%. Since approval ratings are useless, let's focus on how Noem would potentially do in a Republican primary. She's unique in that I'd expect her to perform well in rural areas, as well as with evangelical establishment voters. However, I still haven't seen her do well enough with the white working class to suggest she could have that Trumpian appeal that handed the election to Republicans in 2016. Remember, Donald Trump only had to do 1% worse in 2020 than 2016 to lose, which he did. So even if Noem does as well as Trump in 2020, she'd still lose. She's not terrible, but I don't think that she would be in a strong position to win an election, so I'll give her an electability rate of a C-. Ted Cruz has become a household name over the past 5 years. He was first elected to the Senate in 2012, then launched a campaign for president in 2016, coming in second place in the Republican primary to President Trump. At first, Cruz was a notable Trump critic, and he even refused to endorse him at the 2016 Republican convention. He also famously called Trump a sniveling coward in March of 2016. However, ever since Trump was elected in November of that year, Cruz has been a pretty big fan of the guy. In 2018, when Cruz ran for re-election to his Senate seat, Trump campaigned for him and he praised the president, writing a blurb about Trump for Time magazine, calling him a flashbang grenade that was fixing Washington. Then, in January 2021, Cruz tied himself to Trump with a cord of steel when he objected to the 2020 election results on January 6th, and maintains that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. This makes Cruz a subpar candidate. Many diehard Trump fans don't like him because of his opposition to the former president in 2016, and he has since lost a lot of moderates that supported him back then due to his polarizing nature in the Senate. Cruz gets an electability grade of a D. We're down to the top 5. At number 5, we got another senator elected in 2018, Josh Hawley of Missouri. Hawley is a key reason that the GOP held the Senate majority from 2019 to 2021, as he won potentially the most important Senate race of the 2018 midterms, where he beat out Democratic incumbent Claire McCaskill in a massive pickup for Republicans. However, it's not just his clutch victory that makes Hawley a top-tier candidate for the GOP. It's his rhetoric and voting record in the Senate. Hawley is voted as a staunch populist, meaning that he supports things that would help everyday Americans over larger corporations. For example, Hawley is a huge supporter of the proposed minimum wage increase that progressives on the left have been pushing for. He co-sponsored a bill that would have raised the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour with Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders, a big voice on the other side of the aisle. That being said, it's not all rosy bipartisanship between the senator and his Democratic colleagues. Hawley objected to the 2020 election results in multiple states and supported false claims of voter fraud. And he voted against the Democratic-backed COVID relief checks in March of 2021, despite their bill being very similar to the GOP-backed bill that he voted for nearly a year earlier. Hawley's Trump-esque rhetoric may help him with the base, but should he win the GOP nomination, I have a hard time seeing him compete with suburban voters that gave Trump the middle finger in 2020. Hawley may be better than Cruz, but he still isn't ideal for the GOP. He gets an electability grade of a C+. It's now time for the final 4. Leading the bunch is former Vice President Mike Pence. On paper, Pence is a great candidate. His rhetoric isn't as divisive as Donald Trump's was, meaning he has better appeal to suburbanites and moderate Democrats. Him also being the Donald's VP could really help him with the Trump base, giving him the advantage of being one of the few potential Republican candidates to get Trump supporters on board while getting the necessary crossover support. That being said, this doesn't seem to be the case for Pence, as he has managed to alienate both moderates with his ties to Trump and the base that doesn't like him as much as they used to, because, in their eyes, he betrayed them by not overturning the 2020 election results, which Trump claimed he could do. In reality, Pence had no power and simply had to preside over the process in the Senate. Pence has good upside, but he's still not the top-tier candidate that they need to win in 2024. He gets a B. Nikki Haley ranks at number 3, and for all of Donald Trump's term, she was considered the frontrunner for the 2024 Republican nomination. Up until the 2020 election ended, Haley was floated as the Republican Party's best shot at winning the White House in 2024, for obvious reasons. Haley, being the governor of South Carolina, is from a region trending increasingly Democratic, and she governed as a moderate conservative, giving her the ability to appeal to suburbanites who voted for Mitt Romney in 2012, but turned away from the party after Trump. Haley would also be the first female presidential candidate for her party, and could dispel with the stereotype that women are exclusively Democrats. However, since then, Haley's stock has fallen. Haley first pivoted away from Trump after he lost the election, saying she believed that her party made a mistake backing him for 4 years. However, A few months later, in April, she confirmed that she would not run for president in 2024 if Trump ran and would back him again despite condemning him 3 months prior. She has since been branded as a rhino by many Trump backers, has been accused of not caring about the working class. A year ago, she was a top-tier candidate. Now she's fallen to a C grade of electability. Number 2 is a guy I've talked about quite a lot on this channel, and it's fair to say that I've hyped him up as the GOP's number 1 contender for quite a while. If you're familiar with my stuff, you'll probably know it's Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis has basically everything you'd want in a candidate. He's old but not too old. He's from a swing state, but he's not a senator, so his party wouldn't lose a key seat in Congress if he won the presidency. He won in a Democratic wave year, 2018, proving his electability. He has everything the Republican Party needs in a candidate. DeSantis is well liked by Donald Trump and his supporters, yet holds on to the moderate appeal that Trump lacked in 2020. The governor has been praised for his handling of COVID-19 by many, especially those residing in his home state. For these reasons, I'll say not only that DeSantis is the best Republican candidate for 2024, but that he's also the only one who would be favored in a matchup against Joe Biden. DeSantis gets an A for electability. Now, I know I just spent my last section praising Ron DeSantis, and for good reason, but we've still got one guy left. In my book, he's the frontrunner for the Republican Party nomination as of right now, which is why he's listed as number 1. You probably know who it is. It's former President Donald Trump. It makes perfect sense that he'd be the favorite to win the party's nomination as of right now, because he has a foothold on the party. He's very popular and, despite losing the election, still enjoys a 90% approval rating from within the Republican Party. But it's not only his support inside the GOP that he's got going for him. He enjoys unique support from ancestral Democrats and working-class voters. I'm not saying he'd be favored to win in 2024, but if he won in 2016, it would be silly of us to count the guy out. He gets an electability grade of an A-. Not as good as Ron DeSantis, but he's still a strong candidate for the GOP because he did win in 2016, and because he could absolutely win again. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that this gave you a brief rundown of the GOP's potential candidates for 2024. Did I miss anyone? Did I not talk about anyone enough? Did I give someone a bad electability grade? Let me know in the comments, and like I always say, I'll do my best to reply to productive comments and engage in conversations with my viewers. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out so much, and it gets more people to know about my stuff. That's it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.